All right, happy Sabbath, everybody. It's good to have those who have driven all the way from across the Mississippi River. Yeah. Yeah, it was. All right. Yeah. Well, they've made it here, and we're so happy. For those who are joining us, they're usually on Zoom and watching there, but now they're here, and watching with us. And all right, from California also, and from multiple places. We're going to continue our study of the restoration of the sanctuary, right? And it started with the decree of Cyrus. And Zerubbabel went back with 50,000 of the Jews back to Jerusalem, and they started rebuilding. But it got halted during the time of false Smyrdes, and it got restarted again during the time of Darius. And they got disappointed, but then Haggai and Zechariah was called to make sure that they can continue, and to encourage them to rebuild. And Zechariah was given 8 visions, and we took several months studying all those 8 visions, right? And then the next chapter of the story goes, Zechariah had to warn them that there's going to be a time of coming trouble. And whose time was that? The trouble that was coming. The time of Esther, right? Those of you who have stayed in the country of North, you're going to have to suffer. And those who have come back to Jerusalem, right, and to rebuild the Jerusalem, that's, the 2 separate peoples. Right? Those who remain in Jerusalem have to suffer a greater time of trouble, right, at the time of Esther, right? Yeah. You should be rebuilding in Jerusalem. Instead, you're still in Babylon, right? In Shushan, yeah. Because of that, you're going to have to suffer a greater degree of the Sunday law, right? It's a time for us. It's really what we've found out is that those who remain in the cities will have to suffer a greater time of trouble during the Sunday law, because that's what we studied from what happened to Esther and Mordecai. It's not that they were not saved, but it was a troublous time that they had to go through, as compared to those who were in Jerusalem rebuilding the sanctuary, right? And the best place to rebuild your sanctuary, to build your character, is in the country, right? So those who want to stay in the cities, they're going to have to suffer the tribulations of Sunday law a lot worse than those who are rebuilding their character, their soul temple in the country. Okay, so that's what we did up until last week. All right, so now the story moves on. The story moves on to the time of Ezra now. All right, and we've done Ezra many times. We've done Ezra many times, but today I'm going to concentrate more on how to defend the story of Ezra based on the year that he came out of the year. What year that he came out of Babylon? What year? What year? It was during the time of the decree of Artaxerxes. What year was that? The going forth of the commandment to rebuild and restore Jerusalem is 457. Because 457 is the basis for what 2 time prophecies? 2370 weeks, right? And to understand 2300, you have it is the basis of Daniel 8:14, when the sanctuary shall be restored. And that verse corresponds to the foundation and the central pillar of our faith. We are going to be tested. Are you Seventh-day Adventist? Yeah. What is your faith? right? It's going to be your central foundation. Your belief about the sanctuary and the three angels' messages are going to be tested. And that has something to do with your understanding on whether you can defend the year 457, right? Yeah. Okay, so that's what we're going to do today. This is, I had a very interesting time trying to, to put the study together. So let's get to it. All right. So this is the Estrus return to Jerusalem. And we start with this verse, right? Mm-hmm. Then I heard one saint speaking, another saint saying to that certain saint, that Palmoni, right? So that's Jesus. How long shall be the vision? How long shall be the chazon concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, which is in Hebrew, or which is in Aramaic, 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. The scripture which above all others have been the foundation and the central pillar of the Advent faith was the declaration of Daniel 8:14, right? These had been familiar words to all believers in the Lord's soon coming. By the lips of thousands was this prophecy repeated as the watchword of their faith. Yeah? They repeated this, but the complete understanding of this did not come to them all at one time, obviously, right? It was very gradual, right? And then so we're going to go over that, and specifically about the year 457. All right. So this is an old slide that I had, and it's a graphics of the Daniel 9, right? Daniel 9, because Daniel did not understand what was being said. Then the sanctuary will be cleansed. He said, wait a minute, I'm supposed to go back to Jerusalem after 70 years. And now Gabriel is telling me it's going to be 2,300 days. And he fainted, right? He could not understand it. And when was the understanding eventually given to him? In Daniel 9, right? In Daniel 9. He had to be given that understanding. Okay. Even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the chazon. In the beginning, I saw a chazon vision, right? In the beginning, being caused to faint and faintness, I fainted because I did not understand what it meant, right? So I saw that chazon vision, right? And then I was given the understanding of it, meaning the ram is Medo-Persia, right? The he-goat is Greece, and then the little horn is pagan, and then papal Rome, right? I was given that understanding of that chazon vision, but I was not given the understanding of the Mare vision. Now I need to understand what it means, the Mare vision, right? The Mare vision is when the end of the 2,300 days. That's the Mare vision. I didn't know that. All right. So this is the 2,300 days. Right. Yeah. The appearance of the angels. When you see the appearance of Jesus. The Mare means you see the appearance of Jesus. 70 weeks are determined. 70 weeks are determined upon the people and the holy city. So when's the 70 weeks determined? 70 weeks right there in the beginning, right? It is cut off right there. So it's cut off from the beginning, right? And from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem, which is what year again? 457. Unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks plus 62 weeks plus 62 makes what? 69 weeks, right? 69 weeks. After that 62nd week, after the 69 weeks, shall the Messiah be cut off, right? Shall be cut off right there. Messiah be cut off. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. All right. So it ends in 34 anything. Okay, so if you were Willam Miller and the Millerites, and you didn't know anything about prophecy, and you started studying, and you use your concordance, right, to understand when, 1844, obviously they initially thought it was 1843. But to understand when the sanctuary was cleansed, I would ask you, which event would probably be the first thing that a person would want to know to be able to find out 1844 from here, right? Which one would you say you would want to know first, so you'll be able to decipher 1844? Which one would you say? Going forth a commandment, right? Yeah. I would say that's very important, obviously, because that's the beginning, right? Yeah. But that would be kind of difficult because you did not know which commandment, for one thing, and then you did not know the month, the date, or the year. You didn't even know that, right? But one thing that would be easier to know is when Jesus died, right? Why? Now, you don't know what year, because people at that time were still arguing. Some saying it was 30 AD, 31, 32, 33. Everybody, had their theory.
They're all in the
same ballpark. But one thing that you know for sure is what? About Jesus' death? The date. You know the date. Not in Gregorian time, but you know the date in the time of the Jewish reckoning, which is what day? The 14th day of the first month, which is the Passover. He died on the 14th day of the first month. So this is the 14th day of the first month, which is what time of the year is that?
Spring.
It's in the spring. So you know for sure, okay, this is the easiest one to get. All right, this is spring, right? If this is the spring, and you add 3.5 years after the spring, the 34 AD, you didn't know that it was 34. The end of the 70 years would have to end on what time of the year?
Fall.
It has to end in the fall. So that way, it means that the beginning of this had to start at the fall also. So that if you know the beginning in the fall, then you know that the end of the 2300 days will have to be also in the fall. All right? Yeah. So it basically starts right there, knowing that Jesus died in the spring. All right? Okay, but at that time, the commandment, the going forth of the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, right, is 70 weeks, right? You gotta go 70 weeks. So 69 weeks until the time that Jesus is anointed, that we know, right? All right. Okay. The thing is that which commandment is it? How many commandments are there? Right? There's the Cyrus, commandment of Cyrus. Okay, I got. All right. Here's Cyrus, right? Here's Darius, and here's Artaxerxes. All right. If you add, let's see, 69 times 7, that's 438 years. 483. So if it's 536 is the first commandment, right? And it's 483 years from there, it would come to around 56 BC. It can't be. That's too early, right? It can't. It doesn't make sense for this commandment to be the one, right? If you do it from 520 and 483 years from that, that would be 37 BC. Too early. 37 BC, that too early. But if you go from 457, right? 457 minus 483 would give you around 28 to 27 AD, right? See, that would fit better. So that way it is it has to be this decree, right? It's Artaxerxes' decree, right? It makes sense from that decree, so that they're going forth. So it has to be the third decree, okay? There's a lot more information there, but we don't. That's the main reason for this slide. Right. Okay. Now, what about how did the pioneers figure this out? Right? I have the clue up there. Who was the first one that said it had to be 457 BC? Who was the first pioneer? Willam Miller. I have it up there. I have it up there. He says it's got to be 457 BC. How did he figure that out? Now, the thing about it is, look at this. You read this. Exactly 490 years from the decree given in the 7th year of Artaxerxes, right? Because that's from the Bible, right? In the 7th year of Artaxerxes. 457 years before Christ unto his death, 33 years after the birth. Wait a minute. 33 years? So he's saying that these 70 weeks ends at the death of Christ in 33 AD. So, he did not get this. How did he figure this? How did he get to this conclusion that the 70 years ends at the year 33? One of the ways is that, and this is what we always knew from before, he was counting the year 0. Right? He counted the year 0. Right? So that way, when he counted the year 0, there's no year 0. 457, and then you go 70 weeks, you end up in 33 AD. Right? 2300 days, you end up in 1843 if you counted the year 0. But obviously, quickly they realized there's no year 0. Right? There's no year 0. Right? So it was actually Willam Miller. Right? Even the ending of 70 weeks, he thought it was the death of Christ. The end of 70 years actually shows to the death of who? Stephen, not the death of Christ, because Christ's death was in the middle of the 70th week, the middle of that 70th week. All right. So he did not know this yet, right? So the first thing that he got was 457, right? He did not even get the death of Christ, right? Yeah. He got 457 right.
How did he come up?
Now, the thing is, how did he come up, right? Okay, that's that. How did he come up right there? Okay. The public press had also published that this is Willam Miller. This is Sylvester Bliss talking about Willam Miller. The public press had also published that I had fixed upon a definite date, the 23rd of April, for the Lord's Advent. Therefore, in December of that year, as I could see no error in my reckoning, I published my belief that sometime between March 21, 1843 and March 21, 1844, the Lord will come. Okay, how did he come up to March 21, 1844? How did he think that Jesus was going to come on that date? Because that was the first day of the first month. The first day of the first month of the year 1844. So he thought that Jesus was going to come at the end of 1843. When it changes to 1844, that's the last time that Jesus would have come, right? That's the first day of the first month. So then he says, okay, how do the Jews reckon the first day of the first month? And they said it's on the spring equinox. And spring equinox would actually fall on March 21, 1844. But quickly they figured out it can't be true. Because spring equinox is whose reckoning? Is Babylonian reckoning, right? The Jews would not have started the reckoning of the years. When did the Jews start reckoning their years? In Egypt, right? When the barley harvest was hit by the 7th plague, right? Right? The 7th plague hit the barley harvest, right? And then from that, then you look at the full moon, And when you see the new moon, that's the first day of the first month. All right. So then they go, when is the first day of the first month then? It's according to the barley harvest. So this is Leroy Froome talking about what Joshua Himes eventually published in the the Advent Herald at that time, that they eventually came to the Karaite reckoning. Karaite reckoning says that the barley harvest, right? So that then they came to the year April 19, right? They came to April 19. They came to April 19 as when Jesus would come. Obviously, they were disappointed. And this on that day was called their first disappointment, right? Is their first disappointment. All right. So who was the one that came up with October 22, 1844? Okay. Which Millerite actually came with October 22, 1844? Samuel Snow, right? Right, here's Samuel Snow. Oh, before that, let's go through here. The majority now began to favor AD 31 crucifixion date, right? Before they were thinking it was 33. Advocated by William Hales, thus placing the cross in the midst of the 70th week, all right? Okay, why was there such a confusion? All right, this is where was the confusion? When you look at Luke 3 verse 1, right? When did Christ start his ministration? According to Luke 3 verse 1. It's in the 15th year of Tiberius. Luke 3 verse 1. So Christ started his ministration on the 15th year of Tiberius. Now you go back into history. When was the first year of the reign of Tiberius? 14 AD. When you add 14 AD and then 15, it'll be 29th. Wait a minute, it has to be the fall of the 29th. And you add 3.5 years. Wait a minute. That's why they said Jesus would have died on 33 AD. Because according to history, is that Tiberius started his first year of reign in 14 AD. The thing about it is that his stepfather was Caesar Augustus. And Caesar Augustus had become very sick and could no longer do his duties. 2 years before Caesar Augustus died, Tiberius started to become co-regent. So he started reigning, actually, not in 14, but he started reigning in 12 AD. So when you add 12 AD plus 15, you get 27 AD. That's when Jesus started his, right? Yeah. All these things, right, our pioneers figured it out, right? It's pretty amazing, all right? Okay, that's when they figured out when Jesus died. 31 AD, okay? All right, right there. So that's what I put. So you have to get this thing right. You got to get all these dates right before it will synchronize with 457. And then who figured out it was October 22, 1844? It was Samuel Snow, right here, Samuel Snow, right? You can read all of this, right? Eventually, they figured out 31 AD. In the midst of the week is 31 AD. Actually, it turns out to be, I think it's, if you were to put it the Gregorian calendar, Jesus died on April 27. 31 AD, right? They know it exactly to the hour, right? When Jesus died, right? The hour, the date, exactly. They know it exactly, right? And then they can, from then, they now figure that out, that it is the autumn of 1844, all right? Okay, but how did they come to 457? That's the question, right? How did they come to 457? All right. So this is their disappointment. Miller first thought it was the spring equinox. He was disappointed. Then he said it's the barley harvest, that Jesus was going to come, right? But then they were disappointed. So Samuel Snow in the meantime had always said, during this time, Samuel Snow was one of the younger pastors at that time, the younger ministers, who said that no, the cleansing of the temple is during the 7th month, the 10th day of the 7th month. So it has to be in the fall. In the meantime, Willam Miller says, no, it's still in the spring, even though Willam Miller was the first one that taught the 7th month. Right? He eventually went back and says, okay, it's got to be in the spring. Then he was disappointed. The next thing that happened was Samuel Snow gave his discourse in the 5th day of the 4th month at the Boston Tabernacle, right? And he says this is when he proclaimed that Jesus was going to come on October 22, 1844. And he repeated it at the Exeter camp meeting in the 1st day of the 5th month, right here, August 12 to August 17, right? And then this is October 22, 1844, the Great Disappointment, all right? So we see that there's a correlation with the 3 decrees, right? Because the 3 angels' messages, we won't go there, but the 3 angels' message you can see was being proclaimed at this time too, right? Okay. So what did they use to figure out 457? How did Willam Miller figure that out? All right. Well, they had to know Ezra 7:9. Ezra 7:9 was shows Ezra 7 verse 6 to 9. You read in verse 7, in the 7th year of Artaxerxes the king was when Ezra came out. And it was the 7th year of Artaxerxes. The 1st day of the 1st month, that Ezra came out of Babylon, and then he arrived in Jerusalem on the 1st day of the 5th month. So I put it, the 1st day of the 1st month in the 7th year of Artaxerxes. So you can see that in those days, you specify a date, the day and the month of the king's reign, right? Right. So how do you figure out the king's reign? Yeah. How do you figure out when the king first reigns? Where would you find out? Where would Willam Miller go find out the year that Artaxerxes first reigned?
You have to look up historical sources.
Absolutely, right? You have to look up historical sources, right? Okay. And now this is what Ellen White was saying. This is just specifically about the story of Ezra. We won't go into too much detail about this, but Ezra came out of Babylon on the 1st day of the 1st month in the 7th year of Artaxerxes. When he came out and he was disappointed. Why? Because there's no workers. There's no Levites or Nethinims. He says, how are we going to have the sanctuary services in Jerusalem if we don't have Levites and Nethinims? Because they are the workers, right? They're the workers. We need to have them. There was a disappointment, right? When he came out on the 1st day of the 1st month. Because there's no sons of Levites and there were no Nethinims, right? And so what did he do? He tarried. He waited. So there's a disappointment and there's a tarrying time. And how many days did he tarry? He tarried at Ahava for 3 days, right? And then he called for his brethren to come out of Babylon, right? And then eventually they came out. There was 40 priests and 220 Nethinims, right? 40 priests and 220 Nethinims. Right? that joined. Right? All right. So there's more, but obviously there's a lot more that did not come out. Right? In about 4 months, they went back, and in the first day of the 5th month, in the 7th year of Artaxerxes, they arrived in Jerusalem. All right. Okay. So this is what the summary is, right? The first day of the 1st month, coming out of Babylon, there's a disappointment. There's a tarrying in Ahava. They have to call the Levites and Nethinims to come out of Babylon, and they have to separate the Levites to take care of the treasures. Right? And they leave Ahava on the 12th day of the 1st month. All right. Then the first day of the 5th month, they arrive in Jerusalem, and the silver and the gold vessel were weighed on the 4th day of the 5th month. Right? And Ellen White said, when he had the decree in his hand going to Jerusalem, it was not in effect. But when did it become in effect? In the autumn of 457 BC. All right? So, right. Well, this is from an old slide. I didn't even bother to change that. I should have changed the background. Right? This is when we were studying Daniel 11. How did they figure out 457 BC? The Bible gives the data for a complete system of chronology, extending from the creation to the birth of Cyrus, a clearly ascertained date. From this period downward, we have the undisputed Canon of Ptolemy. Have you studied the Canon of Ptolemy? Yeah, we studied it. Yeah, you heard about the Canon of Ptolemy? All right. The Canon of Ptolemy is written by a scribe called Ptolemy. He lived during the Egyptian reign of the kings of Ptolemy who reigned in Egypt. He had all the library of antiquity in Alexandria, and in that library was all the books that came from Babylon and Medo-Persia that was taken by Ptolemy, because and he brought it all to the library in Alexandria, and from there he put it all together, and he listed all the kings starting from the time of Babylon all the way until the time of Antony and Cleopatra. All the way from the time of Babylon, right? All in order with the years, right? Okay. The undoubted area of Nabonazzar, extending below our vulgar area. At the point where inspired chronology leaves us, this canon of undoubted accuracy commences, and thus the whole arch is spanned. It is by the canon of Ptolemy that the great prophetic period of 70 weeks is fixed. This canon is demonstrated by the concurrent agreement of more than 20 eclipses. So how did he synchronize the years? Because he wrote on the canon, he wrote during the year of this king, there was an eclipse, right? And those eclipses you can corroborate even until now, because NASA will actually say there was an eclipse in this year, on this year, and exactly the date and the time, the month of when it happened, and it actually is corroborated, right? Okay, so this is how they found 457. This date we cannot change from 457 without demonstrating the inaccuracies of Ptolemy's canon, right? So because otherwise we have to throw out all these eclipses, right, and all these other documents from the Egyptians and the Babylonians that corroborate this canon, all right? Okay, and here are some of the eclipses that is around that time. The year, who's Nabopolassar? He's the father of Nebuchadnezzar. He wrote, in the 5th year of Nabopolassar, there was a an eclipse, right? It's on April 22, 621, right? And all these eclipses was noted in the Canon of Ptolemy. The amazing thing was this eclipse right here, the eclipse of the time of Cambyses. Who's Cambyses? Cambyses is the son of Cyrus, right? The son of Cyrus is Cambyses. This eclipse of July 16, 523 BC was predicted even before it occurred. Okay, now if you go to the NASA site, how do they predict when is the next eclipse? With a computer. They have to use a computer. NASA has to use a computer to figure out when the next eclipse is. How did the Persians and the Babylonians figure out? They were even better astronomers. They don't need no computer. It is just amazing how well they knew the stars. They were masters of astronomy. It was amazing, right? It was amazing. Okay, so this is the eclipse of the, right? Eclipse of the sun, right? And these eclipses were all written in these, I guess they're not hieroglyphs, but what would they be? In the tablets, right? Of the Babylonian times and the Medo-Persians. And this actual tablet is describing one of these eclipses, and there's thousands of them, right? And that's why they said, okay, the Canon of Ptolemy is pretty much undisputed, right? Okay, and what did what was the year of the first reign of Artaxerxes in the Canon of Ptolemy? All right, this is from all the way from the Babylonians to Nabopolassar. This is even before Babylonians. This is the kingdom of Akkad, the kingdom of before Babylon. This is Babylon right here. Nabopolassar, Nebuchadnezzar, all right, Nabonidus. This is Cyrus, Cambyses, Darius, Xerxes, Artaxerxes the first. What? 464, right? So if you go 464, what is the seventh year then? If it's 464 was his first reign, 457, and this is how they figured it out, because they believed in the Canon of Ptolemy, right? And it's corroborated by multiple eclipses, right? And it goes all the way until the time of Julius Caesar, right? I made this slide so long ago. There's this tourist under the Julius Caesar's statue in Rome. Who's that? It just goes back how long ago that we were studying this, right? Yeah, just so happens. All right, anyway. Okay, so this is the Canon of Ptolemy, all right? 457. That's how our pioneers figure out 457. All right. Okay, there's problems with the Canon of Ptolemy, however. They have now found out that the Canon of Ptolemy used because he lived in the time of the Egyptians. He lived in Egypt. He used the reckoning of the Egyptians. The reckoning of Egyptians begins in December and ends in December, right? So the years begins in December and ends in December. That's got to be a problem because it doesn't synchronize with the Jewish reckoning, all right? All right, because the Egyptian reckoning is from December to December. Now the Persian reckoning is from spring to spring, right? Spring to spring. What about the Jewish reckoning? We say, okay, it's fall to fall. how can we tell that it's actually fall to fall? Because when we look at the time of Solomon and the time of Josiah, they used a reckoning for their civil year is it fall to fall or what? They use spring to, they actually use fall to fall. But the thing about it is they changed, right? And I can go through this, but you can watch our, we did this a long time ago, our series about, I can't remember, around the book of Ezekiel, right? About the book of Ezekiel. Jehoiakim and Jehoiachin reckoned their civil year from fall to fall. The thing about it is, the last king of Judah, the last king before they were taken all to Babylon was who? Zedekiah. His reign was changed to spring to spring. It caused a confusion because a lot of people did not know this. And it was our chronologers from Andrews University that eventually figured this out. And the reason why they were able to figure, the only way you can decipher the prophecy of Jeremiah, right? Where you have to, he had to lay on one side 390 years and lay on the other side 40 years. If you understood that Zedekiah's reign was from spring to spring, as compared to Jehoiakim and Jehoiachin, right? So the Jews actually, whoever's around them, whoever influencing, whoever they're around, they will take some calendars, right? Where they were in Canaan, they used the months of the Canaanites. They had the months of Ziph and the months of Bul, and they were Canaanite months, right? When they were in Babylon, they took what? They used to call the first year, the first month, what did they first used to call it? Abib. But when they came back from Babylon, what did they call it afterwards? Nisan, right? They took on the culture of where they lived, right? So they changed, right? They used, right? So we know that they used to have fall to fall, and then they went to spring at the time of Zedekiah. So when they went to Babylon, they went spring to spring. This becomes a problem if you think that Ezra used his reckoning as spring to spring, right? It becomes a problem, right? It becomes. We'll find out why it becomes a problem. All right. Let me go here. All right. Okay. I'll skip this slide. All right. Why does it become a problem when you think that it is actually spring to spring that Ezra used to reckon his years? All right. So we have to look at the accession year of Artaxerxes. Now, what's the difference between the accession year and the first year of a king coming up?
The accession year is usually just a partial.
Right. Yeah.
So-and-so died or whatever, and he came over maybe with like a month or two
left over for that year.
Right.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to describe to you, show you what an accession year is. All right. So this is 465 BC. This we use our Gregorian calendar, and we switch in January, right? 465, 464, and 463, right? Artaxerxes' dad is Xerxes, and Xerxes was murdered. He was murdered by a general named Artabanus, right? So Artabanus took the throne for a very short time, right? But then his son came and killed Artabanus and took over. So then Artabanus' reign was for a very short time. We don't know exactly how short, but anyway, then Artaxerxes became king, right? Because he is the lawful heir, because he's the son, right? Okay. All right, now let's go here. Oops, sorry, let me go back one. So this is the first year of the Canon of Ptolemy, right? But what we found out, the Canon of Ptolemy is based on Egyptian documents that it starts with the year Thoth, the month Thoth, and ends the month Thoth, and it's around December, to December. So according to what it's from the year of 464 is the first year of Artaxerxes. It's mostly in 464 because it starts from December to December, right? This is Egyptian reckoning. All right, what is Persian reckoning? All right, Persian reckoning is actually from spring to spring, and spring is Nisan, right? So when the king dies, Xerxes dies, right? He died on his 21st year of reign. Let's say he dies right there, right? The rest of the year, his son becomes king, right? And that part of that year, which is a short year, is called the Accession Year, right? This part is the Accession Year. Then when the year begins, then that's the full year, first year of his reign. So the first year,
I think the term they use is
regnal year, right? Regnal year. So this is based on Persian reckoning. Now Persian reckoning is spring to spring, Nisan to Nisan, all right? What about Jewish reckoning? Now it fits if the Jewish reckoning would be from fall to fall. This will all fit. The problem is that what we call the higher Bible learners, the higher Bible scholars says, no, it can't be right. The people in Persia at that time, Ezra, right? He was living in Babylon. He had to come out during time of the Persian kings. They, logically would have used the Persian method of reckoning. So they had to go spring to spring. Besides, the Canon of Ptolemy starts in December to December, right? Based on that, Ezra must have come out. The first year of Artaxerxes cannot be 464. It has to be 465, based on spring to spring. Now I'm going to show you why. This is what they're saying. Okay, I know this is a lot of information, but this is, if you can understand this, then you will be able to defend 457. Right? The way that 464 BC will synchronize as the first year of Artaxerxes depends on the fact that Jewish reckoning for their civil year is fall to fall. All right? Why is that important? Okay. Because now what they have found in 1890 something, they have found tablets. All right? It's called let's see, what are these tablets called? It's called, they found it in Egypt, all right? Oh boy, what is the name of these tablets? All right. Okay. The Elephantine. It's called the Elephantine Papyrus. These were written by Jews who were displaced and had to become soldiers for the army of Egypt. Right? So all of Egypt and Palestine was under the reign of the Persian kings. Right? All right. So what they did was they had these papyrus and they look at all the tablets, and on these tablets will be written who was king at that time. And they would look at the last year, even the last date of that year, when the king was still king, because it would say who was king at that time, right? And they found out that the last tablet that showed that Xerxes was still alive was December 17, 465 BC. And the next tablet that they found was the successor for Xerxes, which eventually was Artaxerxes. And that was on January 3, 464 BC. Right? So they said, wait a minute, that's in Egypt. How could they know in Egypt that Xerxes have died by January 3? You can't travel that far from Shushan to Egypt, because it has to be that Xerxes had died already, right? Before December 3, sometime in late December. So now they found out for sure Xerxes died in the end of December, 465 BC, right? This is very important, right? You may say, so what, right? If Xerxes died in 465 BC, because now the succession goes to Artaxerxes, right? So his accession year will be from this time until this time, according to the Jews. But the accession year, according to the Persians, would be a very short time, until the spring, because they calculate their years from spring to spring. But the Jews, they do not follow, right? The Jews do not follow the Persians. They calculate it from fall to fall, all right? Okay, so what does that mean? All right? This is the 7th year of Xerxes. Xerxes' reign, right? The Xerxes' reign is, right, 17th year, 18th year, 19th year, 20th year, and then he died in the 21st year. He died here, and Artabanus came on. But then Artabanus was killed by Artaxerxes. So Artaxerxes' reign, and this is his accession year. And then this is his first full year, right? And that is what year? This is 464, right? That's in 464, right? Okay, so if this is his first year is 464 and 463, that means his 7th year has to be 458 and 457, right? This becomes important. It becomes important when we see the next one slide here, right? Because this is the Persian reckoning, right? From spring to spring. Here's the Jewish reckoning, from fall to fall. Now people said, wait a minute, it can't be fall to fall. It must have been spring to spring. The thing about it, why it is fall to fall, is because Ezra came out on what day? First day of the first month, in the 7th year of Artaxerxes. This is his 7th year of his reckoning, right? His 7th year of reckoning, he came out on the first day of the first month. The first day of the first month is Nisan, right? He came out in the spring, right? And then he arrived 4 months later in the first day of the 5th month, because they calculate the year from fall of 458 to fall of 457. That's why the first day of the first month and the first day of the 5th month falls in the 7th year of Artaxerxes, if it is in a fall to fall reckoning. What if it was in a spring to spring? It would have been here. First day of the first month would be here, and first day of the 5th month would be here. This is why the higher biblical teachers would say that Ezra came out in 458. Right? All the other religions and all the other theologians would say Ezra came out in 458. It's only the Adventists that say it's 457. Not based on the Canon of Ptolemy specifically, but here's another proof, right? That it had to be the fall to fall, right? Fall to fall calendar, right? Ah.
Because, it's interesting because if evangelicals are using 458 BC, then they're left with a conundrum in Daniel 9 that last 7 weeks because it wouldn't match. Because they're putting the crucifixion at 33 AD.
Yeah.
They all do.
Yeah.
The Catholics and evangelicals all put it at 33 AD, which would not line up with their argument of 458. Therefore, you have to do something different with that 7 weeks.
Nothing fits, actually.
You apply it to Antichrist at the end of the world instead of that time.
Because they don't believe in 458, and they believe Jesus died 33.
So
right? Nothing fits.
Yeah, so they don't have the Daniel 9 prophecy having anything to do with Christ, and they don't believe 33 AD is prophesied, and they just believe that they can prove 33 AD through various means, but they can't actually put Christ in that prophecy of Daniel 9 to be crucified in the midst of a week, because it's like, well, wait a second, if we do this, that shifts him from 33 AD to, at best, in their particular case, it would actually put it in their case 30 AD is what it would do.
Yeah,
the crucifixion of Christ.
Actually, that would be. That's why they're all over the place, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. So this understanding was known by our pioneers, and a lot of it is actually lost. We don't even know this, right? But we have to rediscover it ourselves so that we can also defend 457, right? And this is very important. In the end time, we're going to have to defend our faith, and one of our pillars of faith is actually the three angels message and the sanctuary doctrine, which hinges on when Christ died and the beginning of this commandment to rebuild and restore Jerusalem, right? 457. So we have to defend that, right? Okay. All right. Okay. Here's another one. This is Nehemiah, right? So remember the story of Nehemiah? He became the cupbearer, right? And he was very sad when he heard what was going on there. I don't have to read the verses. You know the story. When was it that he heard about the news? It's in the month of Chislew in the 20th year, right? The month of Chislew is actually the 7th month, all right? So then, after that, in Nehemiah 2, he went to Artaxerxes the king, right? And then he met Artaxerxes the king in what month? The month of? But both are in the 20th year. So what do the Bible scholars who say it has to be spring to spring? What do they say? There was an error in Nehemiah's writing. They said there was an error in Nehemiah's writing. This does not make sense because Chislew cannot come before Nisan if it's in 1 year. Nisan has to come before Chislew, right?
They'd have to say this is the 21st year. They would argue because Nisan in this case would be after Chislew.
Right.
The event is happening, so they would have to say this must be it's supposed to be the 21st year.
Yeah. So they said there's something wrong here. So because Chislew is the 7th year, right? The 7th month, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and then you got the Nisan, right?
Next year.
Okay.
I think the thing that I'm trying to understand is they reckon differently than how the first of the month is.
Yeah, because they say it starts from spring to spring. So if it's
interesting to me because we reckon things from the first month to the last month, but they reckon things differently from what the first month is.
But it's a civil year.
Do with kings.
With the kings.
Thank you.
The civil year is from fall to fall, right? So when you have like political things, years of rain, all these economical things, it's fall to fall. But when it comes to harvest, it's from spring to spring, right? Right. okay, if you say it's spring to spring, spring is right here, right? Spring to spring, then the 19th would be here. The 7th cannot be in the 20th.
Right.
If you say it's the spring to spring. So the evangelicals, right, say there's something wrong. Somebody might have written this wrong. Nehemiah got something confused or something like that. All right? But that cannot be true. Because if the year starts, right, the civil year starts in the fall, right, then the 7th year, the month, and the first month would still be in the 20th year, right? Right? That's why it had to be fall to fall, right? So here's another proof, right, that it was actually fall to fall, right? It cannot be spring to spring. Okay, all right. That's all right. Here's another one. Now this one is actually extra biblical. It's called the Elephantine Papyrus, but you have to be a chronologer to be able to know this. All right. Okay. There's writings here. All right. Okay. There's writing here, here, and here. Okay. It says that it's the 8th Egyptian month called Farmuti. Right. On the 8th day of Farmuti is also the 8th day of Tammuz, which is a Jewish month. So these Jewish soldiers who had to become mercenaries for the Egyptian armies, they actually wrote, to make something legal, they had to write it in an Egyptian date and a Jewish date, but they also had to write it in the year of the Persian king who ruled them, right? Because at that day, the Persian realm ruled the whole known world, which included Egypt and Palestine. So they wrote, it's in the 3rd year of Darius II. Thing about it is, the Egyptian month is based on a solar calendar. It's always from December to December, right? It depends on the sun. What about the Jewish month? Does it depend on the sun? No, it depends on the moon. So it changes. It sometimes changes, goes, keeps going back and forth. There's only one time during the time of Darius that this would actually fit. That the 8th of Tammuz would actually fit the 8th of Farmuti. And that is if you calculate it based on a fall to fall. Right? So here's another proof. Now, I won't go through that. That's a little bit too much to understand, but just goes to show that there's an extra biblical proof that the Jews in Persia at that time used a fall to fall calendar for their civil right?
That's why they did the king, because that was absolute fact you can check.
That's right. Yeah. Right. So it's important that we actually know that even though the Jews used to use fall to fall, even from the time of Solomon until even the time of Josiah and Jehoiakim and Jehoiachin, when they were ruled by the Babylonians, they eventually went to spring at the time of Zedekiah. And then when they were ruled by the Persians, then the people who goes, well, they must have used spring to spring, but actually they didn't. So Ezra still used fall to fall, all right? And Nehemiah used fall to fall. All right, okay, so here's a summary. All right, we go to summary, right? From time of Saul to the time of the kings of the 10 northern tribes, right? To the time of Jehoiakim and Jehoiachin. These used fall to fall, but Zedekiah used spring to spring, right? And 607 was when Daniel came out, right? 607 when Daniel came out, was taken to Babylon, right? It was 490 years from 1097 to 607. And that's why they had to be in Babylon for 7 times, which is 70 years, right? All right, and the kings The kings are Nabopolassar, Nebuchadnezzar, Evil Merodach, Neriglissar, Labosoarchad, Nabonidus, and Belshazzar. Right. The thing is, in Canon of Ptolemy, it shows only the kings that rule more than 1 year. Right. We know there's Darius the Mede. He was not a Persian king. He was a Mede. Right. So who was the first Persian king? Obviously, it's Cyrus. Right. Cyrus. Right. Starting in 537. Right. So there's 70 years until the time of Cyrus. 537, and then Cambyses, and then false Smyrdes, and then Darius, Hystapes, and Xerxes, Artabanus, and Artaxerxes. Now this is the canon. Canon shows the years, right? These are the years. And it does not include Labosoarchad, nor does it show Belshazzar. That's why the evangelicals said, who's Belshazzar? It's not even it's in the history books. Now, why is Belshazzar not included in the history books? He was a co-regent, right? While his father was king, his father decided to go into the Egyptian desert. We don't know what he was doing there, but he went into the Egyptian desert to become, I don't know. Yeah. He decided not to reign, but he was still king. So Belshazzar, his son, became co-regent. But in the books, it still showed that he was the last king, Nabonidus. But according to the Bible, it was Belshazzar, right? But he was co-regent. And we have Darius the Mede, right? There's false Smyrdes. And there's also Artabanus here, right? Artabanus. How many kings of the time of Babylon? 5 or 7 kings, right? 7 kings, right? How many Persian kings from the 1st to the 3rd degree? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kings, right? How many kings from the time that the temple was desecrated until they were taken to Babylon? From Manasseh until Zedekiah, right? I didn't put it down. Manasseh, right? There's 7 kings, right? Manasseh, Ammon, Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and Zedekiah. 7 kings. So many 7 kings, right? Yeah, it's amazing, right? So many of these, and they're all prophetically significant, right? So we'll have. This was the summary that I had from a long time ago, right? So from here, this is our last slide. Right? This is the explanation of Daniel 8 and Daniel 9 to understand from when the decree went forth to the time that Jesus was cut off in the midst of the week, and until the sanctuary is cleansed, right? Right. We have multiple witnesses, right? We have the witness of Nehemiah, that they used the reckoning of fall to fall, right? And we have the witness that they had to have used the fall to fall reckoning for the time that Ezra had to come out in the 1st day of the 1st month, right? And arrive in the 5th day of the 1st month for the whole prophecy to fit. If they did not use the fall to fall calculation, then 457 would not fit. And if 457 doesn't fit, then you cannot have the 70 weeks. Then you cannot have that Jesus died in 31 AD, the first the 14th day of the first month in 3180. Then you cannot have that Jesus entered into the temple, right, on the 10th day of the 7th month in 1844, and all of this is the foundation of our faith, right? The sanctuary message and the three angels' messages, right? Now the thing about it is, we have witnesses from extra biblical, but there's actually more witnesses from the Bible, because Jesus says, "I am the Alpha and the Omega. I declare the beginning from the end," right? And that also applies to prophecy, right? Because there's prophetic periods that would show that the end and the beginning of those prophetic periods are the same. They're either chiastic mirrors or they're exactly the same. And these prophecies that apply to the ancient Jews will also apply to our time, right? So next week, I'll go over the prophecies that will show the chiastic mirrors, which is basically a kind of like a thumbprint, right? The method of how these prophecies has to be divinely appointed. These prophecies had to be like the wheels in the wheels turning, right? Because all these prophecies, it looks so complicated, but you see the exact workings of divine intervention in all these prophecies. And we can see it also in the prophecies related to Ezra, all right? So that's what we're going to do this next week. But this week, we've shown how we can defend 457. So I hope you've learned something today, right? And hopefully it'll be fruitful so that you have more faith in the lines of prophecy, which will repeat in our time, right? Okay. And that is a more sure word of prophecy.